The photo of 6 Desert Vista High School students wearing T-shirts depicting the N-word sparked conversation in the Valley and around the world about issues of racial sensitivity. Is it really just a word? Joining me to talk about this is Dr. Neal Lester, an ASU Foundation Professor of English and founding director of Project Humanities at ASU. Dr. Lester, thanks for joining us on Horizonte. You've been here before. We've talked about this before.
We have talked about this before.
And early on, after this all developed, you sent me an email saying, why are we still talking about this?
Yes, and that's a bit of a rhetorical question, but it's also a question that I'm still pondering. Because it seems like we're going in a circle and not exactly advancing in this conversation. I do hope that this moment, however, is different than the others.
And what makes you hope that? I mean, is that a realistic hope?
Well, I think it's now crossing into the generations, I think, that matter. And so in many ways, I look at this as an opportunity, since I have been reached out to as someone to advise as they get through this circumstance. That not only will I be continuing my efforts to educate, but also having the high school students along with me, I think could be a good team, so that it's not just the generational thing and the divide that seems to sort of dominate these conversations.
Well, let me ask you this. You've been working on this for some time. The issue comes up repeatedly. And yet, the timing on this one in particular was unfortunate. Not that there's ever a good time, but it was right on the heels of Martin Luther King.
Absolutely, in the same week, actually. And I think that, in part, explains why this became a national, even international story, because Arizona is still living under that umbrella of the MLK holiday and the approval not until 1986. And so this notion that, yet another story about Arizona is something that we are still trying to counter. But I think the fact that this happened at a school and that it happened among students who initially were not offended by this until they recognized that they should be at least concerned about this relative to language and hip-hop and race relations, and a kind of unawareness that was prevalent not only among those 6 young women, but also their fellow students of color. So while they knew that something was not quite right with the spelling of this, because of that delusional sense that, if you spell it, one way with a GA or a GAH, then it doesn't mean the same thing as with the ER. So I hope that this is an opportunity that we might get to the bottom of those kinds of unfounded conclusions that many young people still hold on to when they start talking about language and they start thinking about what they are hearing and absorbing around them.
So you indicated you've been contacted to be part of the solution, so to speak, both locally and in other places.
Correct. Well, and this is not the first time, but what it does solidify, however, is an immediate need that this is not just here in Arizona, but a school in Oregon has reached out, as well as a school in Omaha, Nebraska. And this is just on the heels of what happened in Ahwatukee, in the sense that they don't want this to happen at their schools. So they're trying to be proactive, and part of that is listening to how students really think and what they really think about language, about race relations, and how what they think may differ from their parents' and grandparents' perceptions of race relations in America.
And you and I talked a little bit off camera about the fact that the involvement of the students may make this opportunity a little different than other situations.
I think so, and I think because this is not a matter of singling those students out as representative of all students, but it also sheds light on the fact that there needs to be more cultural sensitivity and cultural awareness in the pedagogy, what goes on in the classrooms. And that's something that I've learned in this circumstance that I didn't necessarily know before this happened, is that there's not consistent training for teachers and staff pedagogically, as well as sort of generally when students are in schools that are not racially diverse and then those that are. So there's not a whole lot of pedagogical guidance in terms of how do you teach a text that has this word in it in such a way that the word doesn't overwhelm the text, whether it be To Kill a Mockingbird or Huckleberry Finn. So I think that's what's different about this conversation, and the fact that this school could potentially be a model of what other schools across the nation might look like if they were to engage in making this a teachable moment.
So new strategies may come out of this.
New strategies will definitely come out of this.
And how would you build on that?
Well, what I want to make sure that we do is to have ways that the students are communicating to each other. I have written.
So it's not just you
it's
talking
not just
to them.
Me. I have
not that you aren't very persuasive on the subject,
but I can't be everywhere,
yeah.
and I think that I can communicate to certain parts of the audience. But I think that the combination of me and others with them will make a much stronger case as to why we need to be concerned about language, not so much about what people can and can't say. Because as I've pointed out in many conversations with others, that this is not criminal unless it's attached to some behavior that is criminal. But the fact that there will be social consequences, I think, has to be expanded beyond my generation and this word, but rather what it means to post something on social media and have that never go away. So there are lots of ways that this can become a much larger conversation and a good teachable moment for all involved.
Well, I'm hopeful that we'll have you back on the show to talk about what's been learned as opposed to another why is this still a problem question.
Definitely.
But thank you so much for joining us on Horizonte.
Thank you.